Hey there, Perfect Peeps. Have you ever wanted to come on to a podcast and talk about what you've been working on, or do you have a product to show off? We would love to have you on Purrfect.dev. Please reach out. You can find us on codingcat.dev or just reach out to me personally, Alex at codingcat.dev. Come say hello. Don't be afraid. We'd love to have you on. Thanks so much. Welcome back, Perfect Peeps, to Purrfect.dev. Today on the show, Jason Lengstorf. Is it Lengstorf? Did I get it right?
It is Lengstorf.
I always feel like I mess it up for some reason. I don't know why.
I always feel like I mess it up too, honestly. It's a terrible last name.
I think it's a great last name. I hate Patterson. It's like not unique enough. So
I do have, I'm the only Jason Lengstorf in the world. So my SEO is on point.
That is awesome.
I will say before, like I had to Google for all the research side of this, and I'm like, you're the only one. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, in that regard, I'm happy. I have a friend of mine. His name is Nate Green, and he has to compete with like professional athletes and professional singers, and it's like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine what that SEO struggle must be like.
You have to have a business name with that.
Yeah, Alex, I feel like you're probably in the same boat.
I kind of run into are you related to James Patterson, or like, one of those one-off things? I'm like, no one's related to me.
In West Michigan, they always ask me about Postmas, but I mean, that's just locally. So,
well, for folks joining in, we are talking about moving from WordPress to Jamstack today, which is super exciting. I don't know how many times you've talked about this so far, but we're going to pretend like it's your first time, I think, and just ask you some ridiculous questions.
Perfect. I'm into it.
So just a little background on Jason. Jason has an amazing Twitch channel, maybe beyond that. I always watch it on Twitch, so I don't know if you're on other things, but it's called Learn with Jason. Do you stream that out to YouTube and stuff live too, or no?
It's only live on Twitch, and then it gets cross-posted to YouTube, and it all lives on learnwithjason.dev is where the video playback and the resources and links and stuff all are.
Sweet. And then, of course, always floating around the Corgi Discord with the rest of us. So hello again from there. And then some of the details about Jason. Jason now works for Netlify. He does courses and workshops for Egghead and Front-End Masters. And that's probably you in a nutshell. You got anything else going on?
I don't know. I guess I don't know.
A little bit of everything.
I used to joke in my previous role. I joked that my job was human duct tape, because I just kind of I patch wherever I needed to be. I would go and try to fix it. And I feel like that's actually sort of my happy place, right? Like I like to do a little bit of a lot.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, I like to learn. I like to play around with things, and so being in a role where I get to do a lot of that, it's actually kind of what I love about Netlify too, is the role that I'm in is a lot of like, I don't know, go help the sales team. I don't know, go help the marketing team. I don't know, write a tutorial. It's like, great, I can do all those things. That's fun.
It is. You never get bored.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are the same way. I love doing all of that stuff, but I think Brittany can attest, I usually end up taking on too much and completely get fried. And I'm like, I'm off for the night. I gotta sleep. Like there's too much going on, especially when contextually you go from like, coding to like tutorial mode to video editing to marketing. And it's like too much shift.
Yeah. You gotta split it up by day. I have my, I have to kind of contextually group my work. So it's like, okay, so like Thursday is the day I'm going to write stuff, and I'll do emails and tutorials and proposals. And then it's like, all right, Friday though, I'm just coding. Like nobody talk to me. I'm quitting Slack. Like
nice. That's really cool. That's a good way to break it up. I should do the same thing. Just block off whole sections.
That is, you keep your head in the same space and you are more productive that way. I feel like if you block things off together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a really good infographic I saw about the cost of context switching, and like you effectively lose 20% of your time whenever you context switch. So if you're context switching between 5 things, you're only like 10% of your time is actually productive.
That's crazy.
So keeping single context is actually really, really important for getting anything done.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. We talk about it at work all the time. I haven't heard those exact numbers, so that's kind of crazy to think about. Speaking of context switching, I guess we should dive into the topic.
That was a nice transition.
Such a good
like
segue. That was pro.
Yes, I'm getting good at this podcasting stuff. So yeah, Jason's here to talk about, and it kind of goes along with your new role a little bit, I would say. So all about migrating from WordPress to Jamstack. And our first question that we have for you is, what is Jamstack and what does it mean to you?
So, as you can imagine, I think about this a lot. So the Jamstack it's a web architecture, right? So our goal with Jamstack is to get the site set up in such a way that it is the most maintainable, the most like efficient to produce. And so it comes down to a couple guidelines. With the Jamstack, you're building a decoupled front end. So there's an actual like firm boundary between the front end of your code and everything else. You are pre-compiling as much as you can. So whenever possible, if you've got data that can be loaded ahead of time, pre-compile that down so that you don't have to rely on those APIs to be live. That gives you more resilience and flexibility. And then you want to pull in everything else as needed. So you pull in data either at build time when you can, or on the client side when you can't, or through serverless APIs if you need to do something, or actually through any APIs. You can build a custom like node microservice and have that as something that powers your front end. And it's still Jamstack. Like I think a lot of times people are like, well, you can't have servers on the Jamstack. You can, just don't build them into your UI layer. Like that's the only rule.
Yeah, we're getting that sneaky territory of there's no such thing as serverless. There's servers everywhere. And it's like, yeah, okay, like let's get to the definition a little bit further here. There are servers, you're right, but serverless is just what you explained, right? It's that separation and making sure the UI isn't hitting a server. So we always talk about, or I always say, like, we want to be as like static first as possible, and then from there, kind of move past that. And I think what we're kind of focused on here, the WordPress side to it was always the opposite, right? So it was the server side generated code that's coming back, and PHP's gotten a lot of flack in my opinion. Like I don't love writing it, but I still think it's a great language. There's a reason I think Facebook is still running a lot of their code out of it as well. But of course they've fully embraced React on the Jamstack side of the house. Yeah. So the next piece that we're kind of, or the next question, we always hear like WordPress holds 30% of the internet up. Do you feel like that's still the case, or maybe now that you've been at Netlify, you kind of have jumped in there further and seen some stats? What do you think? Is WordPress pulling away?
I mean, the thing about WordPress is that WordPress really is kind of an unparalleled experience for managing websites on the internet. And I don't think that anything out there has really managed to make it as easy to just say, I want a website, I clicked a button, I have a website. And like there are options out there, like, you see the Wix and you see the, that's the only one I can think of right now. Webflow. Well, but like the kind of like what you see is what you get, editors, and those are fine if you have zero opinions about your site. And like they do work. You can get a great site out of that. But like when you start wanting to customize, usually you fall off a cliff so hard that those sites become kind of unmanageable, right? And then you're unhappy with it, and then you want to move to something else. And if you go with something that's more code focused than WordPress, then the getting started is rough enough that you can't really get there without a developer. And there are lots of ways that you can get set up and then be fine once you have it. Like the developer gets you rolling, and then you don't need a developer anymore. And there's a ton of CMSs that fall in that camp. But that sweet spot where WordPress is like, you click a button and then you have a website, and then I go through a list of themes and I'm like, oh, that one looks cool. And I click a button and now I have that theme, and then I go through a list of plugins and I go, oh yeah, I use MailChimp. I'll click that button. And then you know, like the ease of getting something built on WordPress, there's a reason that it's so popular. And I think that, you know, it kind of set a standard for how to manage backend content. And that's not to throw shade at anybody, because I think that a lot of the headless CMSs are giving them a run for their money in terms of coming in with really excellent experiences for editing content. But like, WordPress has been doing this for years, and they're really good at it.
A little bit of a head start, right?
Yeah, right. Like, but they're just really good at providing that experience. What I do think though is I think that WordPress is not something that front-end developers or people who build websites really get excited about working with. And I think that it's for the reason that you mentioned, where you know, if I'm going to write a front end, I don't really want to write a front end with PHP. It's like nothing against PHP. I think PHP is a great language. It's how I got my start in the industry, but it's not a front end language. And trying to write front ends that are like mixed HTML and PHP, it just all starts to feel a little kludgy. And I'd rather use something, you know, I'd rather start with plain HTML and work my way up to until I need something like React. And if I can use Eleventy to build my WordPress site, great. If I can use Gatsby or Next or whatever to use my WordPress site, great. Now I can do anything, because I can do all the front end stuff that I like, and I don't have to worry about this complicated content layer. Like the CMS is world class, and now my front end can be world class instead of whatever the PHP thing would let me get to, or like hack in there on top of it.
Oh, you've sold me. I think we're going back to WordPress. So the big thing that you often run into, and what we ran into, so there's like a cost offset to this too. So for our stuff, it's a learning management platform, right? And so you need a ton of thread capability because of all of the interactions that are happening, and most of the places that you can host off of, they're just looking for like mom and pop type sites. And typically, like, in my opinion, those are better suited for like a static site, right? And so we're up in like hundreds of dollars of hosting and getting the same, to get the same experience out of WordPress that we can get for free out of like Next.js, right? And so, I don't know, in your opinion, kind of talking about that a little bit, do you see a lot of companies, especially like now in your Netlify role, do you see them kind of pivoting and saying, well, WordPress or X monolithic system was fine? Are they taking a step to like use that API for that system and building a static site? Or is it kind of like all in one, they're just throwing it away and moving on?
I think it depends on what somebody is trying to accomplish. You know, I think like, you brought up a few good points when you're talking about hosting for WordPress. Like when you go to the Jamstack, a lot of the reason that companies go to the Jamstack is not because they're super stoked about like using a static site generator. It's because by making that choice to pre-compile your UI, you're buying yourself a much lower infrastructure overhead, a much lower risk deployment pipeline, the opportunity to be able to deploy to production automatically multiple times per day. You also get this like stability guarantee. If you build off of your WordPress site and everything is statically compiled, you can shut down the WordPress site and the live site is still there. So you don't need to keep your WordPress database or server up at all. You know, you could theoretically have it completely off the internet and behind your company VPN, and people edit in the VPN, and then when it goes published, there is no line from the public website to the WordPress. So some of those things that you see, like WordPress sites get hacked, or WordPress sites go down because they get overloaded, or all of these different things, those kind of disappear when you use this Jamstack thing. And instead of needing the $30 a month hosting that's specialized for WordPress, you can use the free tier of Netlify and a $5 DigitalOcean droplet for your WordPress site, and you're off and sailing. I did a stream with Kobe Fayok on Learn with Jason, where we used Amazon Lightsail, and setting up a Lightsail WordPress instance would cost $3.50 a month, like $3.50, and it's more than enough machine to handle a static install. So there's this.
Is that like a one-click install, or is there
It was pretty darn close. It actually took me longer to log into AWS than it did to set up the Lightsail.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I've gone down that road in our last kind of go around with trying to stand up WordPress, but I did it all like with serverless and like this whole crazy architecture. So with Lightsail, that's kind of a vast improvement for sure.
Yeah, and like, if what we're talking about is like we as front end developers, we want the control over our front end. But when we start talking to the rest of our team, the leadership team is looking for, how do we work quickly? How do we have like fast iteration? How do we, if we get a bug, how do we fix that bug today and not in 3 weeks when we get through the review cycle? If we have a new feature request, how do we get that out? The ops team is thinking about, how do I not get paged in the middle of the night because the server's down? How do I not have to go spin up a backup because this database got attacked, right? How do we not have to figure out how to deal with like a Sev1 incident because, somebody figured out how to get all the emails out of our database? Like so many things that can go wrong, right? And if you move to this Jamstack thing, like you can build a pipeline where, you don't have to do release engineering. Your ops team is just saying, well, yeah, we know that the front end is statically compiled, and we know that like to roll it back is basically one click because the compiled UI goes into a folder and we take that folder live. And then if we compile it again, we get a new folder and then we take that folder live. And if we don't like that folder, we can just go to the old folder and everything's fine. We're back up and live again. So ops teams get time to focus on like the interesting problems, not release engineering. And the leadership team has this confidence that now that the ops team is happy and there's no risk in deploying quickly, now you can iterate. You can pump out 2, 3, 4 releases a day, and it doesn't even put a strain on your team, right? It just starts to feel normal. Like the Netlify app, for example, app.netlify.com, there are days where we'll deploy that a dozen times. That's our production load bearing. That's like the whole soul of the business. And that's a Jamstack app that we just deploy automatically whenever we merge to the main branch.
Are there any issues with build times when you do that?
Because we pre-compile. So like app.netlify.com is more of a single page app approach. So it's still a decoupled UI, but a lot of what happens is client side, so async. So the build times for our app are actually really fast. Like
Nice.
we build the whole Netlify app in a couple of minutes.
That's one of the things people always worry about with static sites is like, how long is my build time going to be? So yeah, if we can avoid that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are strategies around that too. Like, if you've got a big WordPress site with like thousands and thousands of pages, you can do things like do one big build for the 90% of pages that are just there for like long tail SEO that don't get a ton of traffic. And then your top 10% of pages that actually change, like build them as part of a different process. We've got this really nice setup on Netlify, and you can do this on any host where you just set up a proxy for like your archive route or your routes that you're not super worried about. You deploy those from one instance that maybe that one takes an hour to build, but it's also going to build once a year. And then you've got your like active thing, and that's the top 150 pages on your site. That one builds in a minute and a half. And they're all under the same domain. You just, you kind of optimize for like, usually when people are getting really long build times, it's because they're trying to build literally everything every time. And there are a lot of strategies that let you get around that. And they don't really affect like, you can even do it out of the same code base. You set an environment variable and like grab a filtered list of which pages build according to which environment variable. So you run like page set archive versus page set active, and boom. I mean, I realize I'm saying that very like oversimplified, but I promise it's not like it is an attainable thing. It's not like a super opsy thing that you have to do.
Yeah, I see a lot of kind of customers that like that's a big concern, and it's typically coming out of like agencies that they like to change their marketing and their branding often, and so therefore they have to rebuild all those pages quite often as well. And so it's interesting to always think about it that way. And I think the coolest solution, the reason that I feel like Gatsby is somewhat a little behind Next.js on this, is that regeneration portion. So I know Netlify just is about to do a big conference seminar, not sure what I call it, but we're kind of talking about how to do Next.js on Netlify. The only thing that's been holding us back from making that move is actually the regeneration side to that. Do they have a solution for that yet?
Yeah, that's actually running now. The way that we do it is so, and this is where my opinions are going to come out. So
that's fine.
One of the things that I find a little dangerous about the static regeneration approach is that, like, so the benefit of the Jamstack is that we took.
Should we pause a minute and like tell people what regeneration is before we dive too far?
You're right. Yes, let's do that. Okay, so when we talk about incremental static regeneration or any kind of like, you'll hear it called stale while revalidate or partial builds or dynamic something. A lot of times, what that means is you would have some of the pages on the site built statically, and then you have these kind of wildcard routes. And if you hit a wildcard route that hasn't been statically generated, it will go to a backend, generate that page on the fly, and then bring it to the front end. And optionally, you can cache it. Okay. So on the surface, this sounds really promising because, it's like, wow, okay, so I can just like build 10 pages and then the rest of the pages will generate on demand, and that's amazing. And it kind of is, but where the trick comes in is when you start looking at the more advanced ops stories. So with a compiled UI and API layers, you have one caching story. You have static assets and you have API assets. When you have incremental static regeneration, you now have a second layer of caching in there because you have static assets, and then you have an API layer, and then you have static assets that also go back to a server and also call APIs, and then they generate another cached thing at a different point in time. So if you roll back, there's no guarantee that what you're rolling back to is going to be the same as what you had at the time that you did your next deploy. So you're introducing variability, and variability is a really hard thing to mathematically comprehend because it explodes so fast. But factorials is what I start to look at when I start thinking about caching complexity. If you have one layer, there's one possibility. If you have two layers, there are two possibilities. If you have three, there are six. By the time you get to 10, hold on, I'm going to look up this exact number because it's bonkers.
This is live math, folks. This is going to get crazy.
I thought I didn't have to know math.
10 factorial is 3,628,800 possibilities.
This sounds like a lot of problems.
That is a lot of problems.
When they say that the hardest problems in computer science are naming things in cache invalidation, it's not because caching is hard. It's because typically we start introducing multiple layers and strategies for caching. And as we add any rules, the complexity grows, and it's exploding complexity.
I really like this discussion because all along we've been setting up our site, right? We have our statically built blog pages. They work great. I don't want to build all of them every time because we're kind of like Netlify, we plan on probably building the minute I can get a change out, we want it out there, right? We want those features. We're really new. The next kind of phase to that is, okay, all those long tail stuff, I just want those regenerated. I've never really considered the fact that that's fine forward moving, but if we ever had to roll back, that bug kind of remains out there till the next person actually hits that page and gets the regeneration again, right?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that it adds another thing you have to think about. And when I was talking to another company where they had one caching layer for their assets, and then they had another caching layer for their APIs, and then they had a caching layer behind that one. And what they found was when they cleared one part of the cache, it would then go hit the API before that cache had cleared. And so then you'd get a partial cache that wasn't right. And then it was kind of creating this weird situation where they were getting they couldn't clear their cache because as they cleared one part, it would refresh with another part that would keep it in an older state.
Wow.
And it just kind of comes down to this whole problem of like, if it's just static assets and the static assets don't worry about caching API stuff, and your APIs have a standard caching TTL of like, if it changes all the time, maybe it's only 10 seconds, or if it doesn't change very often, maybe it's a day, then the static assets just hit that API and it will always get the right data. And the static assets are always the static assets. So, if it was right when you built it, it's right when they load it, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And that type of guarantee, it's you'll hear it called like atomic or immutable deploys, is this idea that it's a guarantee. It's like functional programming. Or having a pure function, if you've ever heard that description of like the same thing in means the same thing.
Mutating those objects, kids.
Exactly. You don't want mutation. And that's the power of this Jamstack model, is you're basically creating a pure function out of your website. Same input, same output, every time guaranteed.
That is an awesome analogy. I like that.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about Jamstack a million times, and we've had Guillermo on, and we've talked about Next.js, and every time we talk about it, I'm just like, it's amazing. And it is. It's an amazing tool that we're using today. But I've never kind of flipped it on its head and said, okay, what are the problems that you could run into or might run into? I don't think a lot of people for smaller sites will have this issue. If you're like Coca-Cola or like Nike or someone massive and you're building out thousands, or New York Times or whatever, you're building out thousands and thousands of these pages and you're iterating and changing, like now you start to run into scale issues, right? And those are probably the better examples of what you're talking about, where like the static site is going to be faster. However, if I go full circle back to our WordPress piece here, WordPress is kind of the same way. If you've introduced changes, you're hitting that server every single time. So you're guaranteed that is going to be accurate. So it's kind of back to that blending factor, right? So if you can get a static build out there that's fast, that's probably better. But it's that trade-off of, speed versus complexity versus developer experience, like all those things stacked up.
Absolutely, yeah, and where I've kind of fallen on the chart there is like, generally speaking, anything that changes so fast that a build can't get through it is something that you could do as an SPA style, like async render, because all the arguments that you would make, like SEO isn't affected by something that changes every 5 minutes. Like that's just kind of not how that works. And so, when you've got things that don't go with the build, and I think the other thing that is really, it's easy to overlook, but it's such a powerful model, is that idea of like, a website is, when it's static, it's a collection of folders. And if you think about like how that works on the internet, like your routes are all folders. So, you can build just one of those folders at a time. And so you can break your build apart and say like, yeah, I'm going to build my blog or my press release page because that needs to change all the time. And if I just build that route, it's a folder called press release that I can now drop onto the site and it's live. And my press release repo is that section. Or, you set it up as a mono repo, or you set it up as a single site, like I said, with where you say like, build this section of folders or this section of pages. And with each of those moves, like if you just build your press releases, then, even if you got 1,000 of them, like the problems with Jamstack is when you start getting into the tens of thousands of pages. So before then, it's 5 minutes. That's how long it takes to clear the edge cache on like Akamai or CloudFront or any of those anyways, right? So it's like, how much speed are you really getting in exchange for that extra complexity? And in my experience, it's almost never enough extra speed, because the extra complexity means your deployment time goes up. So if it takes you 2 weeks to get that site that is so much faster, are you really faster?
And it's a much better user experience on the front end for the user. So it's, in my opinion, it's just way better.
Yeah, and it's not a matter of better. I think it's a matter of trade-offs, right? It really is.
Everything has trade-offs. Yeah.
And I think that it really does come down to like, I have not seen any situations in my career where I've been like, I'll opt in for that server variability because it really is faster than doing this compilation step. Like the compilation step is because it can be broken apart. I just haven't hit a point where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to kind of circle it back around and let's talk a minute, like all the positive things about WordPress, right? So you have a single site you can stand up. You have a admin backend that you can get into. Typically, a lot of users are using like a media directly on those servers. I think you and I are both media developer experts with Cloudinary, right? So as we kind of pivot to that Jamstack type of mentality, what services are you most commonly seeing taking care of user authentication, authorization, photos? So that's another WordPress thing that we just talked about. Your typical, like, what's the best not best, but what's the most often CMS that you're seeing? Kind of like those are probably covering the majority of everything that we need for WordPress in a nutshell. So like I just talked through like 4 things ish. How do we replace all those, and what are you seeing like at Netlify, if you know, on the Netlify side that's most commonly used now?
I mean, I think one of the most common is just to use WordPress as a headless CMS.
Okay.
And I think that's one of a really powerful way to do it. It has REST APIs. It's got a GraphQL plugin that's really good. And that makes it pretty easy to take advantage of WordPress's media management and its, CMS stuff. For authentication, I don't know that WordPress had a built-in authentication unless I missed that. I think you needed plugins for that. But if you're not going to use WordPress, I think I've been really impressed with Prismic. They have something called Slice Machine that is really wonderful to work with. I just did an episode on that with Lucy Haber about on Learn with Jason.
Sanity.
Sanity's great. I use Sanity to power the Learn with Jason site and like Netlify or Jamstack Explorers on Netlify.
My only qualm with with Sanity, not that I have a lot, but the user authentication authorization role based. It's not there yet, and they know it. Like we've had lots of discussions about that. So I think Prismic's kind of there on that side.
I think like Strappy and Contentful are a little more on the, like they're going to handle those more kind of enterprisey stories. They're pretty dedicated to that stuff.
And I believe Sanity, once you're up in the enterprise version of it, has the story completed. It's just the lower versions. So
I mean, and these are where like kind of depends on what your goals are, because like on the free tier, Prismic and Sanity really stand out. But when you start needing those enterprise use cases, then they are really good. But like Contentful has built its entire product off of being a enterprise ready content management system. So it also kind of how many people are going to work with this content? How many different types of content are you putting in here? How flexible does it really need to be? And also how much work do you want to do to set this thing up? Because like something like Strappy is kind of point and click, or Prismic is point and click. Sanity is a little more like you're going to write a schema, gives you a ton of control and customizability. But there's a little more legwork up front, and for certain use cases, that's amazing. I also just kind of like it as you deploy your CMS alongside your front end, in terms of like you can package them up in the same repo and manage the source code, and like the code is the source of truth. It's not on like Sanity's like server somewhere, and I have to ask permission to get to my database or whatever. Like there's a lot of control that you can get with I think like Strappy, Prismic, and Sanity are all like on your side, their code. Prismic gives you code, but it like generates all of that code, so you're not actually editing it yourself, unless you wanted to for some reason. But and those are all like, they're all pretty good for on the front end dev side, not taking away too much of your control, giving you a lot of freedom in terms of like what comes out. It's a pretty friendly API. For Auth, I like Auth0. I think they've done a good job for that. I think if you're trying to get into something like something lightweight, Netlify has an identity product that I think is really good for the kind of initial use case. It's it'll do like role-based access control, but it's not going to get into like the really heavy use cases of like we need SAML or we need things like that. Like you can probably use the underlying library GoTrue if you want, but you're starting to get into like roll your own solution territory. If you're going real heavy, Okta is really powerful.
Yeah.
Okta is also just like so expensive.
I was gonna say the price, I think for at least the people listening to our podcast, it just completely sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some, another one that I really like for Auth that is kind of an unknown is OneGraph. OneGraph is so powerful for this because it like combines OAuth from all these powerful services. So you can use your Spotify account or your Netlify account or your Google or GitHub or whatever to log in. And then they give you these kind of shared tokens, and you can go in and access all this different stuff on different platforms and build like really complicated queries. I can go to your GitHub account, and then using your GitHub repo info, I could drill into like what Spotify songs you might like. And I can do that all in one query. It's really, really powerful. A GraphQL enthusiast dream, I think.
I have to throw this up. A fan for all of us, of course.
Colby.
Colby's throwing a wave at our way.
We were just talking about you, Colby.
We forgot a CMS.
His ears were probably burning.
We forgot Netlify CMS.
Oh yeah, Netlify CMS. That's if you want to go all Git based. Netlify CMS is pretty great.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing. I've seen people use the Git API directly for a lot of it, but the like backed Netlify's authentication kind of comes into play in that one too. So it makes it a lot more powerful, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It's the sort of thing that like I really like Netlify CMS for teams that are all developers because it under the hood is Markdown. And so you're going to be using GitHub as your workstation. You're going to be writing Markdown, and that whole flow lives inside of GitHub. So I've noticed that Netlify CMS is not great when you're trying to bring in like the marketing team. It can be super frustrating for them because they're like, we don't use GitHub. We don't really live in GitHub. So why are you making us write content in this like GitHub site?
So that's interesting. We're gonna do a pod, I think, next week with Agility CMS. They're a Canadian-based CMS, but they've been around a lot longer than I realized, and so their focus is more towards like marketing and content versus like the data side of it. So it's kind of interesting. All these different CMSs are trying to find like their own like uniqueness in this spot to fill that need. The one thing I'm kind of curious about, and maybe Brittany and I are the only crazy people out there, but we're basically writing everything from scratch. And I'm curious if you see that often too. So two products that I usually use are Firebase to handle all of what we're talking about, and somewhat newer is AWS Amplify. Also kind of holds all of those key solutions, right? From storage and images to authentication to database. And then you have GCP or AWS under the hood that you can just scale out to whatever you need to do.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing that as well? Or is it kind of like those are for niche products and enterprise level stuff?
I think so. Firebase is dope. I've done a couple episodes with David East from the Firebase team on like how it works, setting some stuff up, and it's such a cool thing. Amplify, like I love like Nader David on that team, and I think they do such good work over there. What I have noticed about Amplify though is that Amplify is really, really good for the happy path, and then when you step off of it, you kind of end up in this really kind of murky AWS netherworld because it's like, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like It's just that Amplify was built for like this use case. And if you follow that path, you're going to be in such good shape. They do so much for you. But AWS is a big world. So as you get deeper into AWS, as you're using Amplify, you're going to look over there and you're going to say, dang, that looks cool. I want to use that thing. And then you're going to try, and Amplify is going to fall over.
So the cool part, I don't know how long it's been since like you checked out the Amplify side of things, but the extendability with their cloud templates now, like you can basically use anything you want, which is
cool.
Amazing. Like you can just keep extending and extending wherever you need to go. So
maybe they solved that then, because I didn't see the cloud templates when I last.
There was a moment in time there where you couldn't run your own stacks and stuff like that, and now with CloudFormation, you can stand anything up you want. So
okay, maybe I owe a retraction to AWS then.
No, I think it's a fair thing, and you're not wrong. There's a lot of hidden things that come with pre-canned Amplify stuff that's going on. And yeah, I'm part of AWS Community Builders. So anyone wondering, that's why I kind of talk through this all the time. But the interesting part to me, when we talk about that WordPress piece again, and that's what this whole show is about. If you want to go into Firebase or you want to go into Amplify, you better spend some months like getting things going, because it's not that one-click deploy still. So I think people are starting to figure out with Jamstack, there's a need there that you need this like one-click type of solution like WordPress has. So StackBit's one that comes to mind. What's the Forestry? Is it Forestry? Is that one?
Yeah, Forestry does that.
Yeah. So there's a couple that float around out there. I think that's almost the next phase that we're getting into with Jamstack is the templated. We have your CMS, we have your auth, we have like that whole piece that gets back to WordPress coming down there. But now here's my thing. Why don't you just use WordPress then? Like that's the trouble I'm having with it, right?
I think, one of the things that I've heard that has been it's kind of stuck in my brain since I've heard it, is that the web is a slow cycle of bundling everything up into single solutions and then unbundling them into independent solutions. Yeah. And we're seeing that happen with like WordPress was this, hey, let's put everything into WordPress. And then we saw the downsides of that, because you're using WordPress and it's great for managing your blog, and holy crap is it terrible for managing a forum. And so we thought, well, maybe we shouldn't put everything into WordPress, but it isn't really fun to manage like a WordPress site that's completely independent from a Shopify site that's completely independent from your like Discourse site. Because now you've got to move, like your templates have to get edited in 3 places when you do branding updates. And it's kind of a pain in the butt. So then everybody was like, well, if we're going to decouple them like that, what if we decouple them at the UI layer? And then we get to these APIs. So we see this disbursement of everything goes headless. And now we've got this kind of new paradigm, right? We were like, well, the services should just be good at being services. They shouldn't be good at being presentation layers. That doesn't really make sense. But then that leaves us with this, as you mentioned, like now we've got this armload of things and we got to figure out how to fit them all together.
Yeah.
And so what I think you're right that there is a next phase, but I don't think that it's going to be like the next WordPress. I think it's going to be more of a sort of a choose your own adventure, where you're going to say, I want to build an e-commerce site and I need a blog. I'm also going to do press releases and I want a user forum. And it's going to let you choose from tools, and then it'll kind of stitch all those together into a headless site. And so you'll still be able to get that one-click setup, but it's going to be managed by, a kind of a certain, like, and that's what we're starting to see with things like Amplify. It's like, hey, do you want all these services? Use our CLI and we'll make choices for you. Or like Netlify, hey, do you want to deploy this? We'll take care of the Git and the build and the deployment and the role. Like we're kind of bundling up these things that are possible, but kind of cumbersome to do on your own. Yeah. And I think that the decoupling of everything on the front end is opening up the market for someone to do that well. I think the trick though is going to be, it's going to have to be somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in competing on one of those vectors.
Yes. Yeah. I think the next kind of phase too, like you talk about CLI type solutions, and it's like you want to go almost further past that even, right? Like it needs to be click install and my yoga instructor can handle it from there type of thing. And she doesn't even have a clue that it's it's part of a thing. Like most people that get on and go to like WordPress.com or whatever, they don't realize they're on WordPress. They just need to create a site, right?
Right.
I think that's kind of going to be the next piece. I will say that like even standing up our own LearnDash site on WordPress, there were so many additional things for like a cart checkout and Shopify, and you like go down the list and it's like, wait, am I not just doing Jamstack here? So it's kind of both sides to it. I think you covered it very well. I have a question from Brad Fields out here, kind of on the same topic we were talking on here. It says, what would your top choice of CMS for making life easy for the marketing team, ? And for a dev who is new to the Jamstack to implement? So I think Agility CMS is very interesting to talk through. FlameLink is pretty interesting. They're Firebase. I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think?
I think if I was looking for something that was pretty friendly for a marketing team, I honestly might reach for headless WordPress. I think because I think the experience is just pretty polished in terms of getting them in. Another one that I would look at is right now I would probably look at Prismic, because I think that the work they're doing is really good in terms of it's an easy UI to understand. It's nice to work with as a developer, and they offer some features that are pretty hard to implement in the Jamstack, like preview links. So when you make edits in Prismic, it'll give you a link to a draft, and you can open that in the browser, and it'll actually open the page with some special JavaScript stuff that will let you see a preview of the content.
That's really cool.
And there are a couple of providers who have implemented that, but a lot of them have like pretty server specific stuff and a lot of hosting things. So you can do it through like a very specific cloud provider if you build your site in a very specific way. But the more generic approach is kind of few and far between. So, WordPress has previews, but you would have to like implement your site as a WordPress theme in addition to implementing it as a Jamstack site to get previews to work in WordPress right now, which is not really what anybody's up for. Yeah. But like with Prismic, they've put a lot of thought into solving that problem, and so that to me, it can, like the episode that we did, it was 90 minutes long, and in that 90 minutes, we were able to like build a new site, build a front end for the Prismic site, get it deployed to production, get some preview links running. Like it was kind of astonishing how much we were able to do in that 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's really incredible.
The WordPress one too, right?
Yeah, we got a ton done with WordPress too. Like I will say, like it feels like a whole new world with things moving to a like headless model, because once you learn how APIs work, like if you can pull in data from an API, you now have superpowers in this world.
Yeah, you have access to everything.
Exactly. You can pull in like from literally anywhere. You can pull in data, and the process of working with it and displaying it is more or less the same on the front end. So you've just leveled up as a developer. You crack it once, like, oh, I can pull data from WordPress. Great. I can also now pull data from GitHub or YouTube or Stripe or anywhere, because APIs all kind of work the same.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things with WordPress, they've held that market for so long that it's familiar to those people. So like you were saying, like if it's a marketing team, you're going to want them to be familiar with what they're looking at, and they're going to be familiar with that. So
yeah, and it depends on the requirements too, right? Like, are they writing long form posts where they just want to have effectively, a Word document that they can type whatever they want in? Or are they trying to do like really intricate pages with, like the scrolly telling blocks where they need like a hero image and then a big newsletter box and then a block of 3 testimonials, and that would change my recommendation too, because like, WordPress can be good for that, but you do have to you've got to do like their page builder, the Gutenberg thing. And that means you've got to build it for Gutenberg. And then you've also got to build it for your public site. And you've got to figure out a way to make that look right. And it's just a lot. Right. And I think that was another thing that I thought, the Slice Machine product from Prismic did pretty well. Contentful's pretty good at that as well, with the more like stick content into very specific blocks and then display those blocks on a website.
I think for marketers, they still have a hard time with like Contentful from my experience. They're still like, why am I putting this here and it looks like that over there? And they can't like contextually put those two things together. And I'm like, if you type these two boxes in, they look like this fun little thing card that we built over there. Just trust me. And they're like,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, I struggle with that abstraction too, right? Like if I fill out a big long form and that turns into magic somehow, I'm kind of like, oh, wait, how? Okay, so this goes here and this goes here, and you know, so I can definitely sympathize with that.
Almost inevitably, if you don't have a way for them to preview, exactly what they're writing, they're like, I didn't want that. And it's like, okay. I remember working in Adobe AEM and creating like all these different components that were just everything you said, a hero card, these cards. And by the time we got done, it was like, why didn't we just write all the HTML ourselves? This is ridiculous, right?
It ends up being a lot, yeah. And I think, you know, we're just trying to find that right balance of like, how do we do as much of this stuff in as little code as possible?
Yeah.
And
I think Brittany
that
and I chose to do MDX for our backend, and we're storing that to Firestore. Firebase Firestore. The interesting part in MDX world is that you can create those components, but I have to be honest, like the further that we've made it down this journey, like maybe we'll get there where we need like a hero component or something like that, but we're actually just happy with the markdown side to it. So, but ours is very developer focused, right? Like I would not hand MDX to a marketing person and say, here you go, type these like shorthand things, and this will magically work.
I actually kind of love MDX for marketers because it feels really similar to shortcodes in WordPress.
That's a good point. I never thought about it.
And like when I'm giving, you know, if I'm not going to do a full WYSIWYG, then being able to say, you know how in WordPress you would do shortcodes, and they go, yeah. Okay, well it's the same thing. You just use angle brackets instead of square ones, and they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I think that there's kind of a connection you can draw there. Yeah, I love MDX. I'm not just saying that because Chris Biscardi's in the chat.
We think this is him, Chris. I googled this. I kind of already am hesitating to put it up. I did not like what came up on Google, so I hope that's the thing.
Boop. No, boop press is Chris making fun of me because of I have the boop emote.
It's a Jason thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where like your whole screen fills up.
Yeah, that's what buries us every once in a while.
Don't
Mostly when
Cassidy
Williams shows up.
It's crazy. So yeah, Brad said thanks. He's gonna check out your Prismic stuff.
There's a boop.
Yep, there you go. We'll just keep here. If I do it enough, maybe that'll count. I don't know.
That fills
Yeah,
up
we
the
need to
screen.
get it filling the screen like Jason has on his stream.
Yeah, Brittany said we need to steal you for some OBS magic after this.
Oh yeah, it's a good time. Like the streaming stuff is a whole other thing. I didn't really talk about it when we were saying, but that's like another thing that I'm working on is a whole set of streamer tools.
Have you done a stream on your streaming setup?
Not on my streaming setup. I've done some like streams where I work on the streaming setup, but not one where I like walk through it.
Okay.
Can we have you back on for that? Because I really need to know.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, let's talk about it. It'll be great.
That would be awesome. Let's see here. I've looked at all of our questions. We've hit a lot. We've circled around a lot. The only last thing that I brought up and then completely forgot to bring back up was the two big things on the web, right? Images and videos. Like,
yeah.
The only story that I have, and it's my go-to, is Cloudinary for images. Is there another option that you would throw in there?
Yeah. So Cloudinary is wonderful. I use Cloudinary for all sorts of stuff. Imagix is another service that's very similar to Cloudinary. If you've ever used like Unsplash, Imagix is the API that powers Unsplash's photos. So like when you go there, you can resize them and stuff, and it's all done through the URL, similar to Cloudinary. Mux is one for video that's really good. They do a really good job with that. Cloudinary does both, which is one of the reasons why I kind of like it. It's sort of if I use Cloudinary, it's kind of one and done for me. I can just throw everything at it and it just works.
That's our opinion too. The only thing that we're kind of concerned about, which I don't know that we'll ever get big enough to be super concerned, but pricing wise, Cloudinary seems a little higher than breaking that apart. But I just love the service so much; it's hard not to.
Yeah, and to be to be fair, like I hammer on Cloudinary pretty hard with. I use it for a lot of my demos. I use it for the Learn with Jason site, my personal site, and those don't get like astronomical numbers, but they also get a decent amount of traffic. And
yeah, for sure.
I haven't gotten close to my bandwidth limits to need to move up. And I think that a lot of that though is being strategic, because if you upload a 9 megabyte animated GIF to Cloudinary and then you put that on your homepage, you're going to burn through your bandwidth in a day.
And then leave transforms open and people do the funnest things with those. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So you want to be like mindful of how you use these tools, but you can get quite a bit of distance out of Cloudinary before you'll run into the caps, I think.
I just want to restate, I love Cloudinary. Wait for it. They didn't pay me for this.
Although, wait, how do you get that swag? I didn't get any Cloudinary swag. Where's Dominant Stat? Where you at?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Where's mine?
I was just looking for my backpack. I don't know. I got a whole swag kit. It was sweet.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I have no Cloudinary swag. I also feel like everybody, when the pandemic hit, just like didn't. I know I got to up my game. I got to get my Cloudinary neck tattoo, right? Just like. But yeah, no, I think like when the pandemic hit, it was like, oh, I don't know. We could send people swag, but that'll make them sad because they'll be thinking about the conferences they're not going to.
I feel like all the sweatshirts that finally showed up keep me warm since Brittany and I are in Michigan and it's always freezing up here. So, yeah, sorry, I totally got off topic. Okay. So, so images and videos. The video side, I feel like you have to be on YouTube to cover SEO. Even if you're like we are working on. I gotta keep saying that. I wish we had all this done, right? So for our videos, we actually have those locked behind kind of a paywall, and then we use Cloudinary with a cookie token so that it's secure, so not everyone in the world's ripping our videos off, right? So that side of it is pretty well covered. But like I said, YouTube, you have to be on, I feel like, to get any SEO value for videos that you want people to see and not have to pay for type of thing.
I do think that's true. Like I think there's a trade, because when you go to YouTube, you lose the curation, right? Like YouTube basically takes it and throws it into the soup, and you hope that you float to the top of the soup and show up in somebody's recommendations. But you're right that if you're not on YouTube, like you're not going to show up in the video recommendations and the Google search results and things like that. It's really hard, I've noticed, to find videos that aren't on YouTube. Alphabet soup, good. That's a deep cut. Nicely done, Chris. But so I think like there are ways to, like, there are really good services like Vimeo for hosting video. If you want that video to be yours, like you want to do high quality video that's only available on the website you're hosting it on, and you can customize the branding and colors and all that stuff. Vimeo is great for that. Wistia is another one that's really good for that. If you're doing like if I was going to be doing a course where I was going to host all the video myself and stuff, I'd be looking at options like that to see like how can I control my content but still not have to like really host my own content. Right. I don't want to have to like do my own video analytics and do my own video player. I'd love to outsource that.
So the interesting thing, Vimeo, that's the one I was trying to remember the other night, Brittany. Vimeo, I think, is great. Wistia tends to get crazy expensive quickly, in my opinion. We've looked at that too, and they have a weird way of marketing like your videos too. So like, great service, don't get me wrong, if you want to use it, but it feels more strategic for if you want an app or something specifically for video, which is great. I mean, it's another topic, another segment of what we're talking about. So I love those too. I had another thought. So kind of along that Amplify route, AWS, you can actually do a lot with images over there. But again, how much time do you want to spend on those things is difficult. So you could actually stand up your own API similar to Cloudinary and run that all yourself. I do find that's the cheapest option for both video and image, but you don't lose. You would have to do so much customization versus a platform or a software as a service setup like we're talking about. So another he is on top of his game tonight, guys. Come on. So yeah, I think if you just cared about price and you didn't care about like developer experience or like just getting to market as fast as possible, AWS is probably going to be your cheapest option for these things. So I do always like want to throw that out there. If you're moving off WordPress and you want to get into the Jamstack world, you'd have to be pretty massive to care about those certain things and not use software as a service. So just throwing that in there too.
Mm-hmm.
That goes a little too into something I wanted to circle back into WordPress. I feel like the developer experience with Jamstack is just so such at a higher level, I guess, than what you get with WordPress. I'm a newer developer. I've only been doing this for a couple of years. So I never dove into WordPress because I felt like it was such a jump from what the Jamstack is, and learning that is so much easier.
Yeah, coming from a front-end developer, which I think is your first foray into development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you jump from that into like WordPress, even like unless you're doing very specific theming type things, now all of a sudden you gotta learn PHP and like think about servers and stuff like that. It really takes you out of it. So yeah,
WordPress's model in general is like there's PHP and then there's WordPress, and I feel like WordPress is like such a unique architecture.
Yeah.
In the way that it's run. So it's very like, you got to learn WordPress.
You have to know WordPress. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I feel like.
I think you made a great point though, like just using WordPress with the WP admin or whatever and serving as an API, it's a great solution for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you do it that way, then you never have to look at PHP. You're setting up like the WP GraphQL plugin, and you just go to that endpoint and get your data, and you're like, okay, this is great. I like just getting data. That's wonderful. And may I never look at a WordPress theme code ever again. And you know, I truly do. I run it for a couple of my friends because they've got sites, and all they really want to do is edit their homepage once in a while and write a blog. And there are few things in the ecosystem that are as friendly to that workflow as WordPress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of like, I don't know if hatred's the right word, anger when they went to blocks, but I think for newer people coming into that, like they really enjoy using it. So the Gutenberg
it feels like Notion, it feels like Medium, it feels like all the other editors that you use around the web. So I am one of those people who didn't particularly care for block-based editors, but I also, you know, I'm not the target audience. I'm a Markdown developer. I want to write all my posts in Markdown and like not have to think about that.
Same.
So I try to withhold my salt for because it's like no, I get it. I get who this is for, and like I use Notion. I like the WYSIWYG in Notion now that I've used it.
I wish Notion would like officially release an API. It would make my life so much better.
The Notion API. That's I feel like the Notion API is like what was that Guns N' Roses Axl Rose, or is it Axl Rose, right? His album that was supposed to come out for like 30 years.
Oh.
That's the Notion API.
Like, where are we going with this? Are we going to sing a song? I don't know what's happening.
Hey, you just got to follow along. I get there eventually.
So it's funny because like I think maybe still to this day, but Next.js, or not Next.js, Vercel, Next.js, one of them. They're just two interchangeable. One of them was running Notion as their backend. So they hacked their API and started building sites off of. Guillermo still does this, I think, off his personal site.
What?
All right.
Yeah, we just it works. So we just hacked through it and figured out the API, and then we just use it. And he showed me one day, brought it up, and he starts typing in Notion, and here's his static page. Just, I'm like, I was like, that is crazy. Like, what happens if they tweak anything? Like, you're done for. But anyways, I regress. I think we are so far over our typical 45-minute time, but I love talking to Jason so much. I know Brittany's like, I think she had some caffeine today because she's like, I am so happy to talk to Jason. This is amazing. But yeah, so with that said, we are diving into probably, as much as I love our guests, I love their perfect picks. I love our topics, but our perfect picks section, that's where we're headed next. And I just love him. Mr. Jason Lengstorf is up first. Let me get the StreamYard positioned correctly. I can never do it quite right. Wait a minute. Why do I have chocolate? Yep, that's yours.
Chocolate on your screen.
All right. So here's my first one. Newhouse Chocolate. It's a Belgian chocolate company that my partner Marissa found so this was actually really wonderful. When I was younger, hold on. What am I trying to say?
Wow.
For Valentine's Day, Marissa decided to like buy me chocolates, and I thought that was so charming. And then she bought me like the small box because she knew that whatever chocolate she bought me, I was going to eat in one sitting. And that was a very, very wise decision on her part because I absolutely did eat the entire box in one sitting. But these are some of the best chocolates that I've had in a long time. So I am really excited about these. I actually immediately bought my mom's birthday is this week, and so I bought her a big box of these chocolates. I got her the bigger box because she lives with my dad, and I know my dad's going to try to eat the whole box in one sitting. So I wanted to make sure she got some.
That's awesome.
But these are wonderful. They're really good. They ship, so you can get them, during the quarantine and everything.
That's what I was going to ask. Are they shipping from Belgium, or they must be like?
They probably have a U.S. distributor, I would assume, but the company is in Belgium. I don't know how big their manufacturing facility is, but they make really good truffles. I'm a big fan. So
that's awesome. I just listened to the remotely interesting where you said that you had to get rid of all the cookies in the house.
Look, I have one mode with food, and it's eat. So I will absolutely eat until I'm ill, and then when I get sick, I'm basically like, oh, I'm so excited that I'm making room for more of this food.
Very much same.
Apparently, this run is very common amongst us all.
Yeah.
Holy smokes! What is this thing?
This I am extraordinarily excited about. This is Finex cast iron. So I have been a big fan of cast iron in general for cooking. I love to cook. It's one of my favorite things to do. And this is a Portland-based company that actually just got acquired by Lodge. But they do these like high-end cast iron pans. And I love a couple things about them. The first one is I like that it's a smaller company. I know that because they got acquired, they're not as small anymore. But they do this kind of octagon shape.
Yeah.
Which at first I thought was kind of gimmicky. And then I saw with the lids, when you're boiling something on the stove and you put the lid on and then the lid starts to bounce and then everything bubbles over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With these, if you take the lid and you do a little bit of a turn, you get steam vents.
That's clever.
And then nothing does the boil over or anything. So it's this really, really nice kind of cooking experience. They're super high quality. The handles don't get too hot. They hold heat really well. So if you're trying to keep something hot for searing, or you're trying to do a sauce or whatever, you'll get really even heat because the cast iron holds it so well. And they're seasoned really well ahead of time. So if you've never had to season a cast iron pan, just be thankful that you never had to do it and get one that's pre-seasoned, because it's gross.
Can that go in the oven?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're a little on the spendier side, but I would consider that to be like, cast iron is one of those things that I feel like you buy it once and it will, as long as you don't attack it with something metal, it's going to live forever. So
I have my grandmother's cast iron pan. skillet.
Wow.
So it's been around longer than I have.
Yeah.
So.
The 10-inch pan is the one that I would get. It depends on like how many people are you typically cooking for? Because like I cook for Marissa and I think the 10-inch pan is plenty big. But if you're cooking for like 5 people or around that many, then the 12-inch might be better.
I gotta pop this up and just scroll through.
I'm too, so at least.
What she said. Oh boy.
You're 2 people in one.
But yeah, I would recommend just the one skillet, like the skillet, not the grill pans or the griddles or anything. And
there is like a lot on here.
There's so much stuff in here, but I'm a big fan of like keep it simple. You can use one cast iron skillet for everything, and the griddle is just like it's a cast iron skillet but without sides. So just use the cast iron skillet.
I need that. Yeah,
I love it.
I feel like we need to get Chris on here and do the Chris and Jason show.
Anytime that I get to do the Chris and Jason show, I'm extremely happy.
I kind of feel like we need to do it until one of them passes out, though. So like just a marathon.
Just a marathon.
I don't care if we code and then just pause and say like, "Who wants a burger?" and we'll just keep going. All right, I'm pivoting to Brittany's picks.
All right.
Seriously,
Are they coming? Are they coming up at some
let's do that marathon.
So first we have Jamstack Explorers is my first perfect pick. So there are short and digestible video missions that Jason's company, Netlify, put together to get you started on the Jamstack. And I've done the one on Next, and I think I went through the one on Angular, even though I've never written any Angular. It was interesting. I'm not jumping.
Did you say you wrote some Angular? Does that mean
I watched some Angular being written by Tara.
Oh.
I mean, I also don't write a lot of Angular, but I totally watched that course because I love it. I love Tara so much.
Yeah.
She's like the funniest person. She gets no credit for it, but she is low-key the funniest person I know.
Yeah.
Tara, we're calling your name out. Someone send me Tara's email so we can get her on the pod.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be awesome.
She's about to take a leave of absence, but I will definitely I'll let her know.
Oh, sweet. Thanks. All right. Next up.
And my other pick is Ted Lasso. When it gets up here.
Such a good pick.
Oh my gosh, it was such a good show. We binged it in like, I swear it was like 2 or 3 days and it was over, and I'm so sad. It's on Apple TV, so not a lot of people have that, but it is worth the $5 a month or whatever it is just to get it for a month. And it is hilarious. It is about an American college football coach who goes to England to coach, I'm putting in air quotes, football, because it's soccer in England. So it's just.
Oh man, you just lost half our audience.
Why?
It's okay.
What did I say?
People in India, we appreciate you. We love soccer.
Oh.
But we call it soccer.
Yes. Sorry. It's soccer to me.
That show like makes me so happy. I feel like there is a like segment of entertainment that I just like long for in my heart, which is shows where genuinely good people are funny and nice to each other. And there are so few shows that fill that niche.
Yep.
And I feel like Ted Lasso does it, Community does it, like or not Community, Parks and Rec. Like, you know, shows like that, right? Where it's just like people that you like doing things that are mostly nice to each other. It's such a wonderful.
It made you feel good, like watching that show. He's such a like genuinely nice person. And it's like, I want to be that person, even though I will never be that nice. But yeah, it's awesome.
For me, it felt like it kind of had a slow start. I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this. And then I wasn't feeling good because I had COVID last year, which was awesome. Oh, no. And I just binged the whole thing. And it was one of those things where you could feel yourself getting happier. So you just wanted to watch the next one and watch the next one.
It just kept you stringing along through the whole show.
Yeah, it was awesome. Totally.
I feel like I watched the first 4 episodes waiting for someone to be awful because I just assumed that it was going to be that kind of show where like it's like, oh, this is the setup before they drop kick you into the sadness, right?
I feel like not to ruin too much, but the owner in that show, like she was the person who was trying to be sad, but Ted kept cheering her up.
I know. I love the whole
around.
the whole game.
We're gonna ruin the whole show for anyone who
whole
wants to
show.
watch it.
So good.
I'll just stop. Okay, I'm gonna do my picks. So if you've never heard of it, this is Code Newbie, which I'm just realizing I should have probably went like this and brought up the site as well. So Code Newbie, this is the actual site and where they have all their courses and fun things like that. Hey, Kyle Lee. I think he goes by something else with a logo in it occasionally. Anyways, so they just moved from Slack and actually started using Forum. And if you think this looks kind of familiar, it's what runs Dev2. So Dev2 is they released Forum, which is their open source package underneath of Dev2. I don't know if it's completely open yet. I don't know that it is. I'm probably not doing this justice. So I threw our page out on Code Newbie as well. I think we'll cross post and, see if people check out our stuff over there too. I just love Code Newbie. So there's great tutorials that you can always find out there. Next pick, check out Next.js on Netlify. Cassidy Williams is talking about it March 4th. So perfect timing. That's like next week. I believe next week's March.
She did. I know it's going fast. She did one
March?
A couple months ago too. I think that was before the Next on Netlify. Is it a plugin?
Yeah. She Cassidy has been like firing on all cylinders with Next content. She did a list of all of the Next content that she's created over the last few months, and it's so daunting. Like she did more over the last few months than I think I produced in the last like 2 years in terms of content. And it's all around Next and different flows. So she's got stories on here's how you can do like authentication. Here's how you can do personalization. Here's how you can do split testing. Just all these amazing stories of how to do Next stuff. And then Lindsay Levine, who's a little less visible, but working on super cool stuff for Next on Netlify, has just been like chipping away at building this incredible experience. So it's pretty much seamless. If you want to build with Next, you build with Next, and you go to Netlify and it just works, and you get a lot of those. We're trying and earlier when I was talking about the pitfalls of incremental static rendering, I do think there's a world where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. And we're working hard on that. So no promises and no details yet, but like stay tuned, because Netlify is gonna drop something that's gonna help, right? Like we're trying to solve this problem in a way that keeps atomic deploys, that keeps that promise of like instant rollbacks, but that doesn't get you in this mode of like, well, you have to rebuild literally everything, literally every time, right? And that also doesn't require you to get strategic about breaking up sites and stuff like that. But all of that is kind of built off of the Next on Netlify effort.
Are you somewhat suggesting today, if I said, let's not deploy to Vercel, let's deploy to Netlify, everything would work, including regeneration, server side, the whole bit?
Yes. It would all the serverful stuff in Next would run in serverless functions.
I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds pretty cool. Cool. I don't know what's going on in the comments, so I'm just gonna throw some of these up so we can laugh about it before my last pick. It sounds like we've booked Chris and Jason for a 24-hour stream. It's gonna be
some footy pajamas and some hot cocoa, and we'll just get weird.
I think that has to be a requirement, right? We all come in PJs, and so actually, this is great. On Fridays, I usually do my AWS Amplify community builders like live code, and we do Visual Studio Live Share.
Oh, nice!
I think if we all jump on Live Share and just take pieces of an application and just go, I think that'd be amazing. So
that'd be a fun, weird experiment.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe we'll have to put it on your live Twitch, and I'll steal the YouTube footage later. Perfect. I don't know what this means. It seems angry.
It's Jason with the thumbs up.
I know. Bacardi says he acquired a cast iron.
Well, I'll be getting a check from FineX in the mail. Thank you very much.
Why is Jay crying?
I don't know what the cry face is about.
Oh, that was because you called football soccer.
Oh gosh. I have offended all of my British friends. I'm sorry. All of my Indian friends. I'm sorry.
It's not good.
I love you all. Football forever.
It's getting deeper. Wait for it. Oh wait. Oh, that was the wrong one. This one. Stop commenting. I can't click.
Yep, me in a onesie.
I love it.
Yeah, right, we'll set a donation goal. We get enough donations to a charity. I'll do a whole stream in a onesie.
Oh man, how much do you need?
I don't know. We gotta find a charity.
Yeah,
make it happen.
I like it. Code for Good West Michigan.
We talk about it.
Hit me with the top line. We'll make this happen. Okay, let's definitely get some more. What does this actually say? Convert with it. Oh, here we go. All right. So for those on the audio, I had a little trouble. So this is from Jay, I think. I had a little trouble with the serverless Next API functions getting converted with Next on Netlify when I tried. One thing to note at the moment was Next image needed a remote URL. That's what you use Cloudinary for.
Next image has a Cloudinary setup. And I also wrote a little example of proxying the Next image URL to just automatically use Cloudinary so that you don't actually have to do the configuration in Next. You can just plug and play it. There are a handful of ways to do that. With the serverless functions, I would love to talk to you about what went wrong so that we can figure out how to fix it, because that should work. So if you hit something, we got a bug and we want to fix that. So definitely hit me up and let me know.
So are you saying outside of the next.config.js where you usually like configure Cloudinary, there's a different way to do that?
Netlify has a redirects file where you can do one line redirects. And the way that Next image works under the hood is they fire everything to a route called _next/image. Oh. And if you proxy _next/image to Cloudinary, then you can run everything through Cloudinary's fetch API, and you get a really nice experience of being able to use Cloudinary's APIs without having to do any configuration or finding your API keys or anything. You can just whitelist your domain.
That's pretty sweet. Cool. Awesome. I wonder if that would work with our CodingCat media.codingcat CDN with them. Must. I mean, if you're just proxying it. So interesting. We'll have to talk more. Let's see.
I spend a lot of time buried in this space, so I am always down to talk about this.
So lots of comments. I love this. Remote loader makes sense. Yep. Neat. And following with, I love the stream. That's awesome. That's our whole goal, folks. If you like,
thank you all for joining.
We're happy. So my final pick. I know it's been a long time coming here, guys. Sorry. This thing is amazing. Like
Jason's
just blown away with this.
Hey, everybody gets to see my reaction video seeing this for the first time. All right,
this is even better. I kind of like this. All right, you ready?
Okay, yeah, draw an iceberg.
I'm going to draw my attempt at an iceberg to see how it floats. You ready?
Okay, all right.
Bloop.
Oh.
Hey, look at it go.
Check that out. I sat here during a meeting for 25 minutes drawing things to see what they would do.
Is it rolling?
Oh.
It's rolling.
Yeah.
It's going to go down. Oh.
Like you can look at that. I mean, what is this? Is it crazy math? Is it CSS? I don't know. But
is it a canvas?
That is extremely fun.
It's got to be a canvas. I didn't even check. That's how it's canvas.
Sweet.
I just it blew my mind. So go check that thing out, folks. Here's a fuller version. Here, I'll draw one more. Boop.
That one's like a fish.
Oh, it made it.
Floats.
Oh, that's a light one. Phew. See, it's addicting, especially when you're trying to listen to a meeting, but you're like me and have ADD and just bounce all over the place. So. Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks so much for coming on. We have to do the marathon. We'll figure out what it will take. what dollar amount is required to get Jason and I don't know, everyone in PJs?
Yeah.
The next.
All PJs all the time. That's really the life I'm trying to live here.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And,
of course. Thanks so much for having me. This was a blast.
Cool.
Thank you for coming. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everyone.